Hi.
Hi, how are
Hi,
you?
Akiko. Welcome to the We Got You Mama Summit. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm interviewing her for a second time, you all, because something happened and our recording disappeared. And that's what happens when, that's what happens in life. And we get to still support each other and still show up. So thank you for
Of course.
agreeing to come back, do this
All good.
again. I hope you had a fabulous, fabulous trip. I want to hear all about it after we touch on all things maternity leave 411. So fill me in. Tell me about you. Tell me about your journey into this business, who you're mom to, and yeah, we'll launch right in because I think this is a topic that is not talked about enough.
Yeah,
And I don't think most people, like we've chatted about before, know their rights
absolutely.
surrounding maternity leave. So,
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I love talking to you and I love talking about all things leave. So I love the platform. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Akiko Thayer. I am the founder of Maternity Leave 411. I'm the mother to two amazing daughters. They are 7 and 9, and they bring me joy every day. How I got started with my work. It's kind of a passion project. When I went out on maternity leave with my older daughter in 2014, my employer at the time shortchanged my leave by about like 8 weeks. And it wasn't anything malicious. The HR rep that I was working with just didn't have an understanding of leave laws in play. She didn't have an understanding of federal FMLA, and she also didn't have an understanding of how my own California leave rights, how that interacted with federal FMLA. And that essentially is what caused the kind of the shortchanging of leave. And through a lot of inefficient, back and forth, I actually ended up having to seek legal guidance from an attorney at the Legal Aid Society. And basically, after a lot of back and forth, they finally realized their mistake and gave me the leave that I was entitled to. And then through that journey, I realized that I couldn't be, number one, the only person, that may have gotten misguided, by their HR. And the other major thing that I realized was that it was really, really hard to find easy to read, layman term vocabulary information on leave rights on the internet. And that was the big challenge, was to kind of what my leave rights are. And so what I did was I started a blog, just basically recapping what I knew of what my leave rights were. And in that blog, essentially kind of, got a lot of traction. And then from there, I started a Facebook group where I helped parents navigate their leave rights. And then, fast forward to around 2017, I realized that I could really make a big impact. I can really help expecting parents navigate their leave. And so I formally started Maternity Leave 411. Before I did that, however, I received a certification as a leave management specialist. And I also have other credentials as well, specific to leave management and navigating leave laws. And so I love it. I love what I do. I love giving parents the kind of the gift of time,
yeah.
and really giving them the time that they need to spend time with their babies at home when they welcome a new baby into the family. I think that there isn't really in kind of our business culture, you can't really unapologetically take an extended time away from work. And really, what better time to take time off from work than when welcoming a new baby into the family? And I just think it's so important for employees, for the parents, to be in control of that time, knowing what you are entitled to under the law, to really maximize on that time, versus, in my case, for instance, having your employer tell you that you have to come back when you didn't have to. That
Yeah.
pains me when I talk to clients where that happened. And so for me to educate my clients, to educate parents and what their leave rights are in order to maximize their time off so that they can go back to work when they are ready versus when their employer tells them to.
Yeah. And to just get all this info now, I mean, hopefully while you are pregnant, right, is
Mhm.
just
Yeah,
key instead of like when you're in the midst of it and then also trying to get more time and dealing like it's just it can be doable, but it can be, it could be a lot. I think
absolutely.
also more time that you can get, the better. I think some people might think that well, maybe I will be ready to go back to week in X amount, go back to work in X amount of weeks, but like have as much time as possible to like make that decision, right? Because you don't know until you know.
Exactly. Exactly.
What about when you're pregnant? People have complications, people have, things happen during their pregnancy, or sometimes people like, well, I'm going to take my maternity leave while I'm still pregnant. So I have some time to prepare for birth, but then
Yeah.
sometimes it limits their time after. Like, let's talk around that a little bit.
Sure.
What are those rights surrounding pregnancy?
Absolutely. There's several leave protection or several rights when you're pregnant. Number one, anti-discrimination. Your employer can't fire you or treat you worse just because you're pregnant. The
Hmm.
second right are accommodation rights. Some states have their own pregnancy accommodation rights, but at the federal level, there's a law called the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. And many pregnant employees, they might need to make changes to their job in order to continue working safely. And then, and also maintain their health, their pregnancy health, baby health, etc. And these changes that you make to your work, they're called accommodations. And there are a variety of examples of accommodations. So, for instance, you might need to change your work schedule because you're suffering from morning sickness. You might need to take more frequent bathroom breaks while you're pregnant. You might need to request working from home because you have a long commute, and that commute time is making you anxious and keep making you have anxiety, stress during your pregnancy. Essentially, any type of pregnancy related condition that makes it difficult for you to do your job, but you want to continue during your job, you can request accommodations so that you can continue to work safely. The other leave right while you're pregnant is simply starting a leave of absence, whether under federal FMLA or some states have their own pregnancy disability leave laws. But before you start a leave of absence during your pregnancy, definitely explore your reasonable accommodation rights first, because the benefit of going the reasonable accommodation route first is that it doesn't force you into starting your leave too early. For instance, the federal FMLA, it only provides 12 weeks of leave. And so if you're starting that too early, before your baby's even born, you're essentially cutting into that time during post-birth. So you
Yeah.
really want to, as long as it makes sense for you to continue working safely via reasonable accommodations while you're pregnant, definitely look into that. And also the other thing about reasonable accommodations is that if you're able to continue working, you'll continue to make wages, because once you go out on leave, you stop getting paid. So again, as long as it makes sense for you, your health, pregnancy health, baby's health, continue working with reasonable accommodations so that you can continue to be paid by your employer.
That's awesome. Do a lot of people end up not discovering this and never getting paid during maternity leave? Is there a
Oh,
way around, like, yeah, you can take more time, but you're not going to get paid? I think I've heard that a lot.
yeah.
Um, is there laws behind that? Is it
Sure.
based on the company? Is it based on, like, I know there's a lot of rules and regulations from city to city, but
Yeah.
how is there a way to get paid while you're on maternity leave?
Yes. So unfortunately, at this moment, there's no federal paid leave program. That's
Okay.
definitely something that a lot of people, including myself, are trying to push forward, make more noise around. But there's no federal leave program. So while you're out on leave, while you're taking time off from work for pregnancy, childbirth, anytime you're welcoming a new baby, unfortunately, you have to do your own research to figure out how you can be paid, because these leave laws, they might protect your job, but they don't provide pay. There's no legal obligation for an employer to pay someone while they're taking time off of work. And so do your research to figure out how you'll be paid. There's several options. Number one, your state might have a statutory paid medical and family leave policy, or paid, program that you might be eligible to receive benefits out of. So for instance, in California, where I am, we have the California Disability Insurance program, as well as paid family leave. The other option is a private short-term disability policy that you might have enrolled into as an individual, or your employer might provide that under their benefits. Number three would be an employer paid leave policy. If you work for an employer that might offer paid leave policies to their employers that are pregnant, welcoming new babies, you definitely might be able to cash out on that. But of course, not all employers provide, generous paid leave policies. And then finally, the last way to pay yourself is to use accrued time. And so if you have accrued PTO, sick time, vacation, etc., then you'll be able to use that time while you are out on leave or taking time away from work. And so it's definitely a lot of fitting the pieces of the puzzle together. And, every state might be different. Every employer might provide different benefits. So definitely do your research to figure out what all the programs that you might be able to cash out while you're out on leave.
Yeah. What is the best thing to Google or the site that they're like, oh yes, right now, and they're going to pick up their phone to send them in the right direction to get the correct information? I would assume their city's, government site to find.
Exactly. Yeah. What I would do is I would look at the labor law for each state that you live in. If you just Google, your state and then labor law, typically your state's governance will come up. And a lot of times on those websites, it'll provide what type of paid leave program, if any, that your state has. It'll also provide laws that your state might have in regards to how you might be able to take leave during your pregnancy, childbirth recovery, and when you are baby bonding.
Yeah.
And that kind of also, brings into conversation kind of, there's kind of two main components when you're navigating leave. Number one, how we discussed how you'll be paid during your leave. And then number two, kind of sometimes the more important, the both are important, but the other component is how your job is going to be protected while you're out on leave. And for that too, unfortunately, you have to do your research. At the federal level, there is a leave law called the Family and Medical Leave Act, otherwise known as FMLA. And it provides 12 weeks of job protective leave for a variety of reasons. But in the context of maternity leave, federal FMLA can be used for pregnancy, childbirth recovery, and baby bonding.
That's new, right?
Yes, great. It's great.
Yeah.
But the rub with federal FMLA is that not everyone is eligible for federal FMLA. And for instance, in order to be eligible for federal FMLA, you have to work for an employer with over 50 employees or more within a 75-mile radius. You have to have worked for your employer for at least 12 months, and you have to have worked at least 1,250 hours within the past year. Statistically, only about 55% of employees are even eligible for federal FMLA. Yeah. So do your research on whether or not that applies to you. But the important thing to note is that federal FMLA is not the only leave law that provides protection when you are pregnant and welcoming a new baby. Some states might have their own state-specific leave laws that you can access, that you might be eligible for. And many times, state leave laws are far more expansive and more generous than the federal FMLA. And also a lot of times state-specific leave laws, the requirements for eligibility might be looser as well. So if you're not eligible for federal FMLA, then definitely look to see if your state has leave laws that you can access. And again, by going to your state's labor law website, they typically will provide detail on what the state provides as protection when you go on a leave of absence. And again, these leave laws, federal FMLA, state-specific leave laws, are job protection, but they are not paid. So again, what you have to do, it protects your job, but no legal requirement for
Mm.
your employer to pay you. So in order to pay yourself, then you have to leverage the wage replacement programs that I just mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so you've got some homework.
Yeah.
Some homework, but well worth it if you do that homework and find out what your rights are, especially like in your situation. They're like, oh yeah, here's your rights, here's what we offer you. And then wait a minute, that's not right. And then you have to like, then fight for what is yours. And that can be really, I think, uncomfortable for some people to like come into their workplace and go to their boss and talk about maternity leave and they think it's this and you're like, no, but I did my research and it's this. And hopefully that doesn't create conflict, but it depends on that dynamic. It could.
Yeah.
How would you empower these moms to come to their employer to discuss what is, I mean, lawfully theirs?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's important. That's a really important, thing to address. Definitely do your own research. Don't rely on your employer to tell you what your leave entitlements are. Oftentimes, employers, HR reps, they won't take the time to educate their employees on what they might be eligible for. Um, and, oftentimes employers, HR reps will only mention the 12 weeks of FMLA, and they'll forget to mention leave laws that you might be eligible for under your own state, as well as forget to mention your reasonable accommodation rights under the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. Essentially, when they forget to mention these things, it is essentially shortening your duration of leave that you might be entitled to. So definitely do your research to know what you are specifically eligible for. And when you talk to your employer, tell them, rather than you asking them what, asking them the question, hey, what am I eligible for? What leave laws am I eligible for? Instead of doing that, do your research so that you can tell your employer going into that conversation, this is what I know I'm entitled to, versus you asking. And that is the type of education that I often provide, that I, specifically actually provide to my clients, is to empower them with their knowledge to know what their leave rights are so that they can go into conversations with their employers knowing exactly what their leave entitlements are, so that they can have really accurate, efficient, and productive conversations with their employers. The other thing I'll mention is, when formally requesting leave with your employer, do that in writing. And when you're doing it in writing, use actual terms. The term maternity leave, it's really just a colloquial term. It's actually not a protected leave of absence. So when you are formally requesting leave in writing, tell your employer, I'm requesting pregnancy disability leave. I'm requesting baby bonding leave, because those are terms that are legally protected leave of absences. And so it's important to actually use those phrases so that your employer knows exactly what you're asking for.
Yeah. And that's so, I mean, we forget how often put it in writing, just put it in writing, send, it's always there. You know what I mean? You have that something to fall back on, for that communication that, either took place or takes place, like put it in writing in the beginning so that like you have that to protect yourself.
Exactly.
Super important. So after baby and you get the leave that you're entitled to and you're back at work and you're a new person, you are now a mother and you're choosing to pump at work. I remember being on set and being like confined to like this tiny little bathroom stall, and I was trying to pump, my milk wasn't dropping, and I was like, there's got this, why is this so shameful? Where is she? Oh my gosh, is she pumping again? And it was like I felt they made me feel horrible for pumping. And I was like, this is 12, 13, 14 years ago. And still have friends experiencing it to that. Yeah, I had to go to the bathroom and pump because no one gets it. No one out here has kids. And I was like, shouldn't matter if people get it or not, you know what I mean? Or understand or not. What are those rights that are in place now? And maybe they even, were back then. I think we're more aware of them now. People are standing up a lot more now, but what are those pumping rights when we go back to work?
Sure. At the federal level, an employer has to provide adequate break time for employees to pump as frequently as needed. The pumping location cannot be a bathroom. I hear that often, that the only place to pump is a bathroom. That cannot be. It has to be a place other than a bathroom. It also has to be shielded from public view and obviously intrusion from coworkers walking in on you pumping. In in terms of paid, the law does not require the pump time to be paid. However, if you are working while pumping, and I'm sure many moms are doing multitasking, pumping and working. So if you're working while pumping, that time has to be paid. If your employer also has a paid break policy, and you are pumping during your break, then you also have to be paid pursuant to your employer's paid break policy. These are just kind of the baseline kind of regulations from a federal perspective, but definitely look at your state's pumping rights, because oftentimes your state's pumping rights might be more expansive, might be more generous. But that is at the federal level. Your employer has to provide an adequate time to pump, cannot be a bathroom, as frequently as needed.
Yeah. It's like, why don't you go eat your lunch in the bathroom? See how that feels. Is that
Yeah.
sanitary? Does that feel good for you? Like,
Ugh,
come on.
I know, it's awful.
Ugh. Sitting on the toilet, just like, what is my life? Like, what is happening right now? It's not okay.
No, no.
I love that. I love that they have rights in place. And so definitely,
Mhm.
yeah, we need to
Absolutely.
research those
Yeah.
out. Um, Last thing I wanted to touch on was, what if, I had a friend that was experiencing a lot of complications, was bedridden. And so she, her job was more physical and she could not go. I mean, I would say the last 5 months of her pregnancy.
Mm.
So when it comes to like, is it applying for disability? Is it, how do we navigate, without, I mean, she lost massive income just
Mm.
trying to bring this, baby into the world. So what happens if we're in that place?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and a lot of time you just can't predict
Yeah.
how long you might be disabled for, pre-birth and then post-birth. From a job protection level, definitely look, if you are eligible for federal FMLA, you can have up to 12 weeks of job protective leave. And then if you live in a state that has their own state-specific pregnancy disability leave law that provides a longer duration than 12 weeks of federal FMLA, you can exercise that. If you exhaust your federal FMLA and you don't live in a state that has a more expansive pregnancy disability leave law, or let's just say you exhaust all types of leave, then you would request a disability leave extension under the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, because
Okay.
an accommodation can be getting extra leave time, getting extra disability leave for your pregnancy disability and post-birth recovery period. So there are laws that are in place to protect you when you are disabled for longer than you had imagined. And on the pay side, again, these leave laws are unpaid but job protective leave of absences. So you'll have to do your research as to how you'll be paid. So if you live in a state that has statutory paid disability, medical, family leave benefits, you'll file a state disability claim, for the duration that you're disabled. And again, if you've enrolled in a private short-term disability policy, you might be able to get an extension or receive benefits out of that policy. But again, it's hard. There's so many, every state is different. Every employer is different. Every person is different, right? And so it's really about, doing the research and figuring out how your job is protected, how you're going to be paid, so that you can get an accurate picture of what your leave entitlements, what your paid leave will look like during your leave. But I would say, just from when you are experiencing, whether it be longer pregnancy disability or complications post birth, definitely don't be shy to talk to your doctor about it. Explicitly tell your doctor, I am not well. Explicitly tell your doctor that you are requesting or seeking a disability extension on your period of disability. Don't be shy about that. You really have to advocate for yourself, as a mother, as a parent. And I like to think, and I have seen this, in my time of work of doing this for, since what, 20, officially since 2017, that more and more doctors are realizing that, the kind of the standard recovery period of either 6 weeks post-vaginal birth or 8 weeks post C-section is not enough time, to recover from childbirth. And so more and more doctors are seeing that, I think, are realizing that. So I feel, in my opinion, that more doctors are being open, to and being flexible to extending that post-birth disability period. But you have to advocate for yourself. You have to tell your doctor that you're not well and that you're seeking that disability extension. Don't be afraid, to do that. Your body is important, obviously. If you're not healthy, your baby's not, you need to be there for your baby and your family. And so really just, I really just want to empower all parents, mothers, everyone, to really advocate for themselves, advocate to their doctors, advocate to their employers so that they can really maximize on the time home that they have with their families.
Yeah. It sounds like there's so many avenues and a lot of answers out there. It's just about navigating, right? And finding them. Well, if this overwhelms anyone out there, right? That's why we have people like Akiko here to help us and help us navigate that space, which is, this her life's passion now is what she does. And so if someone wants to reach out to you, need some help, need support, some guidance, we're gonna put obviously all that information in the link and in the email, in social, but just throwing it out there right now, if they're listening, what's the best way to message you, get a hold of you, all that stuff?
Sure. Yeah, probably the best way is either through my website, www.maternity, excuse me, www.maternityleave411.com. You'll see kind of a contact button there. Also, you can follow me on Instagram at maternityleave411.com, not .com, maternityleave411 on Instagram. There, I do a lot of, tips and tricks on how to maximize your leave. And so definitely check that out. But yeah, I'm so passionate about educating parents on what their leave rights are, again, so that you can maximize your time. And so please get in touch if you need help kind of demystifying, what your leave might look like, that process of navigating that process of trying to maximize that. So do get in touch.
Yeah. And we've been talking a lot about, services versus, some fancy pants crib or whatever, like putting on our registry, like time. You can literally have someone coach you through getting time. Like you can't put a price on something like that. It's so important. It's so valuable. This time that you have with these tiny beings is so sacred and so precious that, like, if you can, hey, mother-in-law, I would like, a lactation specialist. I would like more maternity leave. I need help navigating support in that. And then I need that, like, let's get some of those services, some of these things to help put us at ease a little bit, right? Like set our village up for yeah, we can. I love you. Like set your village up so you can feel successful in this journey, because it's, you've done it
Exactly.
twice, so it's rough, it's hard. I mean, it's all super amazing and all the things, but like, the reason I'm doing this because it's like, oh, if I would have known, and
Exactly. 100%,
yeah,
100%. I feel like the motherhood journey, pregnancy, postpartum journey, there's so many aspects at play,
yeah,
and really it's just, getting your village kind of lined up and ready, everything has its place and everything is important from, from navigating your leave to figuring out how you're going to nourish your body and feed
yeah,
your body good food, all of those things play into just a really positive experience, a healthy experience in that
yeah,
motherhood journey,
yeah,
and I think it's great. I'm so excited to be part of this program because you're doing exactly that, right?
yeah,
Educating parents out there of what all of the different kind of services, what all of the different types of programs that someone can, can learn from.
right.
And I'm excited to be part of it.
Thank you for joining us. I
Yeah.
mean, that's all we can do, right? Is educate and empower. And then that will just spread,
Yeah.
someone will hear this. And even if they're not in that space, will be like, oh my gosh, my friend or my aunt or my cousin or my, like there'll be someone that needs to hear this that will just like save their life, you know, and they're going to get this extra time that they didn't even know that that was a possibility,
Mhm.
right? And I mean, it goes all the way in. When we could go on and on, it goes all the way into just, we can venture into mental health and how that's important. And then the whole baby bonding and how psychologically that's important, and how this time, it affects all of that.
Yeah.
It affects all of that, you know?
Mhm,
So, I mean,
mhm.
every single one of these experts, it all ties together. You know what I mean? Obviously, we're all, you know, in this space of motherhood and supporting all things about it. But it's like, you don't think right away, like, oh, learning about my leave rights and this and that, like, oh no. And then it can affect your mental health. It can affect this, it can affect
Yeah.
it can affect anxiety levels, it can affect, you know, and then that affects your family and your marriage and blah, and then you're stressed. So maybe your baby's not latching, and like, this
Right.
is all from my experience anyway.
And
So
how
it's like it's all tied together. So I
Yeah,
just think it's so brilliant. So thank you so much for all the awesome information.
of course, of course.
You're the best. Everyone
Thank
reach out to her. Akiko's got you. She got you, mama. We got you.
Yeah.
And she's available to answer all your questions. Like I'm always saying, our experts are here and ready and willing to help you out and to support you. So if you need that support, please reach out, and we're here for you. So thank you again for
You're
joining us.
welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you. All right.
Yep.
Take care. Squeeze those little girls for me. And
Yeah.
we're going to get together in real life soon.
Cool. Yay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All
Bye.
right. Thanks, Mama. We'll see you.
Bye.